Three, two, one. Welcome back to Chicago Business Community. Today I'm sitting down with a very exceptional person, someone who was and is a swimmer, engineer, University of Illinois, and co-founder and CEO or founder and CEO of Top Tier Lessons. I've been very looking forward to having a conversation with you, learning more about your journey and background, and why we're here today, and learning more about Top Tier Lessons. So please give us an introduction about yourself, and we'll get started.
Absolutely, and really appreciate you inviting me to be
Absolutely.
here today as well.
Thank you for being here.
Of course. So I'm Cara, and I'm the founder, as you earlier mentioned, of Top Tier Lessons. And we're a sports tech company that operates in the NIL space and allows college student athletes to monetize themselves by coaching lessons for kids in the community. On top of that, I was a bioengineer back at the University of Illinois. I've since graduated, been lucky enough to take this company full-time, bring it up to the city of Chicago, which we know and love and get to see a lot of around here. And from there, just continuing to build and grow.
That's awesome. Really happy to see the path that you've taken, and proud to call myself a U of I alum, knowing that others like you are also U of I alum. So that's fantastic. Let's get started. I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into your kind of upcoming, upbringing, I should say, or becoming. Mix those two words. But wanted to learn more about, little Cara. What was she like as a kid? And, how did she get involved in sports?
So little Cara was really fun.
Yeah?
That's the best thing that I could say, honestly. It's so much fun looking back. But for me, I always was that person that was super bubbly. I was running around, super active all the time, incredibly curious. I would question everything, loved debating, diving into things. And I got involved in sports, believe it or not, always swimming from day one. Since I was maybe, before I could walk, I think my mom was the one who threw me in the pool.
Wow.
And turns out, I asked her the other day, I went back and I said, Mom, why swimming? Why did you put me into this? I'm so grateful that you did, but why in the first place? And, she told me that I wouldn't stop crying as a kid. And there were two things that stopped me. One of them was water. So she would put me in the sink, in a shower, in a bath, the sprinklers outside.
Right.
So swimming was a logical choice just to keep me in. And the other one was car rides. So that's really the story of how I got involved in swimming from a super young age.
Nice. I know I cried when I touched water. So that's funny that
fully opposite. Are you a swimmer now?
No.
See, it makes sense. It works
out. But that's very cool. So we were chatting the other day, and you mentioned that you're from South Carolina. What happened? How'd you come to U of I? Run me through that story.
I had a spreadsheet. I really went through, and for me, since I had already made the decision back when I was in high school that I really wanted to swim in college, that was my biggest goal at the time. Growing up, that was everything I wanted to do, to be. Big dreams of that. I also wanted to be an astronaut, and I still do, actually.
Ambitious goal. I love it.
It's going to work out. Coming soon. 2028 launch, nice. I'll be in space.
Yeah.
But even though with that, for me, I knew that's what I wanted. And luckily enough, in the recruiting process, you're able to hone down on schools just from the get-go by where you are in terms of times, what you're looking for in terms of geolocations and things like that. So for me, I knew I wanted to also be an engineer. And really it came down to where do I fit in best on the team, as well as what has a phenomenal engineering program. And I remember I went to Champaign on the first day, and I was staying out in the cornfields. At U of I, it's campus, and then you go a mile out in pretty much any direction, and you're in the middle of the corn with the cows and the pigs and everything across the board. And the first day I remember I called my parents. I was like, hey, guys, it smells like cow poop. I don't know if this is exactly where I want to go. And keep in mind, I come from a rural town in South Carolina, so it's not like I was super used to the city. But the second day, I got to meet the team. And I got to meet the people that make up the heart of the University of Illinois. And I saw the love. that they had for not just what they do in a sport, but also their teammates, also for their goals, their aspirations, their dreams, and who they want to be. And that to me is what convinced me to go to the University of Illinois. It wasn't any statistic on paper or a feeling that you got. It was the people that I met throughout campus.
Was it like a tour guide? Was it the people in the swimming program?
It was the people in the swimming program.
Okay. Because like I'm not very familiar with the way just athletics work in general from like high school to college.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to just hear people's stories, you know, friends and colleagues that I've crossed paths with. But awesome, great. So you come to U of I and you know, you're swimming and you're an engineer. And how are you managing your time throughout all this? It's already a lot being a freshman, being an engineer, and you know, swimming.
Believe it or not, this is one of the questions I get most asked all the time. And it makes me laugh because I recognize in a day, I think when I'm more busy, I feel like I have more time in the day. I found that when I was swimming, when I had, you know, we'd wake up 5 a.m., we'd have practice in the morning, then we'd go to lift and we'd have classes, I'd work on the company, then we'd another practice at night and everything like that. Your day's so regimented and scheduled that you actually feel like you have more time than you would on a day that's completely open. Just think of how you feel on, let's say, like a Saturday or a Sunday where you have nothing planned for the day, no work. It goes by really quickly. And you look back at the end of the day and you say, wait, what?
I accomplished nothing.
Where'd it go? I did nothing. Like, where did it go? And so I think having more responsibilities for me allows me to manage my time more effectively and efficiently, because I really do think that it increases the number of hours that you have in the day. It's a little different.
Well, like your productivity is really high just because everything's like super organized.
You have no choice. You're backed into a corner. You're told this is how it is. I'm a big procrastinator. Simply for the reason that I think, okay, if I have 2 hours to get this done, I'm gonna get it done. And I'm gonna get it done in 2 hours. But if I did it 4 days ago, might have taken me 4 hours to do. And so a little controversial with that one, but it really is how I normally operate.
Gotcha. No, that's good to know. I think we all operate a little differently, and it's always interesting when you compare it with your like friends and colleagues. But awesome. So, how did Top Tier Lessons start? You know, where was the beginning for you?
It was during my sophomore year, actually. So back in went into school in 2020, so this was 2021. That summer, name, image, and likeness was passed. And if you don't know what that is, that's it's a legislation that allow college student athletes to monetize and potentially profit from their own branding, from things like that across the board. And so when NIL came out, this turned into almost $1 billion market immediately overnight. And it was something that was going to revolutionize the world of college athletics. But for me and my teammates, we looked at it and we kind of laughed. We said, what does this do for us? Why does this actually matter, right? We're not influencers. We're not signing hundreds of thousands of dollars in brand deals with Gatorade, PepsiCo, places like that. We can't sell a ton of merch online. Like, I think maybe my mom would have bought it. I don't know. We're pulling straws here. I'm not sure we're even there. But that really wasn't the reality for most athletes cross country. And so I wasn't happy with that. I looked back and I said, what can we do to make this new legislation equitable and accessible for all college athletes across the country? And that's where Top Tier Lessons came to be. It was a way to leverage not just the branding of Cara Bognar, but the branding of Cara Bognar as a University of Illinois swimmer who is so much more than her sport and has so much more to give back to the kids in their community.
Absolutely. So you saw your sophomore year, NIL legislation came out, and you started thinking of how we can make this more equitable and accessible to other college athletes. Did you share this idea with other people around you, and then you started building something? How'd that process go?
Yeah, I shared it with everyone who would listen. It was not a isolation process. When I talk about, you hear the phrase, like, it takes a village. It took a country. It wasn't something that came up from the start. My roommates banned the word startup from our apartment. Truly, they called it the S word. I couldn't walk in and say the S word, because when I had discovered this world and learned that you could just do it, that you could just build something from the ground up on your own, And you didn't need to have a special degree or a special skill. You just needed to be willing to put your foot out there and go ahead and do it. I was floored. This was new to me. I never set out to start a company. I stumbled upon this completely by accident because it was a problem that I was having in my own life. And so we had weekly dinners with two of my best friends back in school where we'd try out a different restaurant every week. And we'd try to go to as many diverse cuisines as possible and just everything we could do. I mean, we went to, I had a great time, but there was a restaurant that served crab in a shack on the side of the road that nobody ever went to. I think it was also co-branded as, I believe, also a Chinese restaurant. So there was Crab Shack and Chinese restaurant in the same building. I was like, this is where we want to go. So I remember we almost got kicked out of the restaurant because of how loud we were, because of how excited we were at the prospect of building a platform like this, of solving the problem that was there with NIL. And so, it wasn't definitely not in isolation. I didn't just wake up one day and decide, but this is how the company continuously evolved through feedback from hundreds of people across campus and continuous collaboration.
Got it. Okay. So how did U of I's ecosystem kind of help you grow your idea into an MVP, into something that's actually growing and getting customers?
U of I helped us in really every step along the way. Our first check came from a University of Illinois program, which allowed us to take the steps to hire people full time even before we had even graduated college. It allowed us, we took advantage of, everything from the Champaign Public Library and branding help on that end to the iVenture Accelerator program with the Origin Ventures Academy for Entrepreneurial Leadership that all came in through these processes, and COZAD New Venture Challenge. So really, you can find for the first 2 years of the company, if you zoom in to any point of where we did, you'll see the fingerprints of a University of Illinois staff member or a University of Illinois ecosystem builder and piece of that together in some way that helped shape the company.
Gotcha.
So I really, for us in the earliest days, I couldn't have thought of a better place to start off, almost a little bit sheltered. You have the ability when you're in college to go out there and really just take as many risks as you can, because you're there to learn. You're there to get a degree typically, but what I quickly realized was there's other ways to learn in the world that aren't correlated to a degree, and you can take advantage of that in the college ecosystem. And if you're just going to school to get a degree and you aren't doing anything else, then you're not walking away with the value of what your tuition should be paying for.
Absolutely. There's honestly, the academics is like the least, not the least important, but like the minimum of what you have to learn.
It is. It's the base mark to start off at.
Because you're
you go forwards.
Going into society, you're learning how to be a human being on your own, But I absolutely agree with you that there's a lot to learn there. So kind of tied into that, you talked about working with iVenture, COZAD. Who do you remember who your first customers were? Who your first? I'm sure you do, but who were your first customers? Your first hires? Your first athlete partners?
Remember it extremely well, like it was yesterday. We actually still work with the same athletes.
Nice.
And some of the same customers that were our very first customers. Wow, it must have been 2.5 years ago when we made our first dollar for the company.
Nice.
So our very first customers were swimming parents in the Champaign community. We ran the most MVP beta, all of the words that you use when you don't want to say you're launched yet, of anything that you could. We launched with nothing but a spreadsheet. And Eventbrite, bringing that together. And what that allowed us to do was to test out what the earliest versions of Top Tier would be in the community with paying customers without needing to build a full product, without needing to go out, spend a ton of money, hire a ton of people, and do a lot of the things that you typically see when someone's bringing something to be. And so for us to go ahead and get that off the ground so early on, it allowed us to learn so much more. And really everything that we've done to build the company has been a continuous cycle of build, measure, and learn. So really, I mean, I'd say I probably learned that from engineering, of just what's a scientific experiment. But I think every aspect of a company can be broken down into science. I really do think that those two are tied together.
Absolutely. And using like a tool like Eventbrite to market it, locally, that's that's something that a lot of people should do. It's free, right? I mean, I assume it was free or
It
very
is.
cheap.
They tried to do a paid model, but then they pulled back and switched
Gotcha.
it. And I was able to talk to the founder of Eventbrite just a couple weeks ago and
Very cool.
let him know, like, hey, the thing that you built
Yeah.
has empowered me and so many others
Right.
to get our start building something new.
Right.
And so I think it's really special. And I know it's a little tangent from the conversation, but I think it's incredibly special when you can build something that also empowers others to build and earn for themselves as well, because you never know what those ripple effects are going to look like or where a consumer is going to take it and run with it. So just really appreciative to all the people who have built tools like that allow us to take those steps and make somebody else's life just a little bit easier along the way.
Yeah, Eventbrite's ripple effect is crazy.
It is.
So many events being organized, so many people meeting people, and communities being developed and formed. So it's really cool that you got to kind of talk with her as well. I wanted to focus a little bit about into your current phase with Top Tier Lessons. You're expanding into new cities and you're growing really fast. First of all, which cities are you kind of growing more into?
We're moving into, it'll be close to 15 in the next couple of weeks, actually, of the largest cities cross country. So for us, this is our big nationwide launch. This is where we get to take those next steps, bring on a ton of athletes, work with a ton of kids, community partners across the country. So it's very, very exciting phase for Top Tier right now.
That's awesome. How are you choosing? You're choosing the biggest cities. So are you? I'm curious. Like, did you choose like Charleston, for example?
We did not choose Charleston. That one didn't make the cut. Soon. My hometown, South Carolina, and Greenville, is where we want to go next. They have just amazing sports systems across the area. But for us, we took a step back. We went through really first by population and just saw where that is, because we knew we wanted to put ourselves out there to take that first step. We're at Top Tier. We're not people who kind of dip our toes into the water. We're most of the team is all current or former college athletes. We're a big jump in the pool, even if you don't know how to swim, because it's the best way that you're going to learn. And if you drown, there's always a way you can go down, push up off the bottom, and get back up to the surface. And so for us, it really turned into identifying, one, what are those big cities that we do want to launch into, and then what are the big cities that have almost like an immediate suburb right outside of it that is very family friendly, family oriented, and is also correlated with a large brand name school. So a good example of that is when we think of Chicago, one of the earliest kind of ring cities with a really large brand name school would be Evanston with Northwestern. So that was one of our first choices, as well as potential for expansion. That was our first choice, but now we've moved up to Lake Forest, which is with Lake Forest College, a D3 school about 20 minutes north of Evanston. So now we're hitting kind of almost close to the Wisconsin border, all the way down closer to the city, and we're going to start expanding inwards. So we look for not just potential for a good early growth market, but making sure that the markets in which we're starting to start our growth on the first phases are ones that can be market leaders for us in 3 years. When we expand from the 1 athletic department or 2 athletic departments we're in now into 36 across the city.
Awesome. It's really cool to see. Yeah, and I assume like you're partnering with a lot of schools across Illinois at the very least, and then across the country soon.
Absolutely. It's great to just watch the student athletes when they go out there and they teach their first lesson to a kid. It's empowering as a coach, as a teacher, to be able to, you have so much love for your sport as a student athlete, and understanding that you have the ability to pass that love on and that confidence and everything that you've learned to somebody else. There's not a better feeling in the world. And now we have the ability to help empower so many other athletes cross country to be able to do that with kids, and then also allow the kids to be able to sit there and just, like, I don't know about you growing up, but there was always a few people that you just looked up to that were older than you, and they meant, you hung on to every word that they said, because they're your parents are your parents. Like, they're not as, we love our parents, but they're not going to ever be as cool as that, 19-year-old that you looked up to and you're like, wow, they've done everything I want to do.
Right. And yeah, like you're not only creating an opportunity for people to teach or learn a sport, it's also like a lifelong mentor potentially, which is, again, going back to the ripple effect of what could be.
It is. That's exactly it. The coaches are more than just coaches. They're role models. They're mentors. They're that person to lean on and build up that relationship.
So when did you start teaching, swimming yourself? When did you start coaching people, kids?
High school was the first time that I started coaching kids. But with Top Tier, I've been coaching as long as the platform's been out. I still actually coach. Got to practice what you preach a little bit. Not going to do that in isolation. And sometimes it's my favorite part of my day. Because it's one thing to build something and see it happen, but then also to be able to be a participant in what you're building and be your own customer in a way. And really on both sides of the platform, I'm able to understand and see things better and talk to real customers because I'm in the water with a kid sometimes still. And I love it. It's something that's very freeing. And it also, now that I've graduated just in the past year, it keeps me tied back to my sport.
You moved to Chicago about 3 months ago, you mentioned?
Yes.
So you graduated a year ago. You were in Champaign or South Carolina?
A little bit of both. I was in Champaign till August and then South Carolina till December.
Okay, cool. So you spent some time there, recharged maybe a little bit, and then you came to Chicago 3 months ago. So how's that been like for you so far? The transition to come into the not the big apple, but a big city with a lot of hustle and bustle.
I love Chicago. Chicago to me represents opportunity. It's from the first time I drove up 57 up to, I was actually going to the University of Chicago. This was 3 years ago now to join. I had this idea for Top Tier, but I took a step back and said, I have no idea what these first steps are. I don't know how to start this. So I actually joined another student company out at the University of Chicago called Standout Search. They match high schoolers with internships, and they're still running today as the largest database of free internships for high schoolers to go ahead and apply to. So joined them, came on as, I believe I was the Chief Opportunity Officer.
Cool
Great
title.
Names, right? Yeah, we love the startup, all the C-suite names that come forward with that one. And got to learn and understand what it meant to be a student founder. And just seeing the skyline open up for the first time when I drove up was phenomenal. I didn't really know any other big cities. I hadn't been to a ton of them before. And just like how I said a little bit earlier with how excited I was about startups, Chicago became correlated with opportunity in these startups in my brain. And because of that, I was driving up 2 to 3 times a week from Champaign back in my junior and senior year just to go to events, to meet people. I think people probably thought I lived here at some point with just how much I was able to do. And it's because the city had given so much back to me already that I knew this is where I wanted to be. I knew this is where I wanted to grow the tech ecosystem. And the community of founders that we have here is really phenomenal.
Absolutely.
So for me, I've known the city. I know the area a little bit. It's been cool to explore it and understand it in a way that's not strictly professional. In like dinners and going out and hanging out with friends and things like that. That's been a different perspective that I haven't had on the city, but it started to feel a little bit like home, even though it's just been here for a couple months.
Gotcha, yeah. I mean, you kind of, a lot of us who lived in Champaign and went to school there, we come up here a decent amount, spent some time in the city. And I'm curious, like, are your friends, like, are they in the city or are they all spread out the country? How's that like?
A little bit of both.
A little bit of both?
There's a few they were a year older than me on this whole team that are still here in Chicago. There's a few still down in Champaign. There's a few in California, Colorado, up in like the Philadelphia, New York area. So really people have kind of gone to so many different places and are doing so many different things. I think one thing that's very cool about being a part of an athletics team is that you're not necessarily being in different friend groups segmented by major, which I think a lot of times you end up being with people who are doing similar jobs or similar careers to you. When you're on an athletics team, everyone has a different major. Everyone has different goals. Nobody's chasing the same dream. Nobody is really in the same bucket. We're all from everywhere. We have people that are international on the team. And so we have that ability to be able to watch each other grow and support each other in a way that's, I think, a little bit different than you would typically see in just one major group. So it's cool. Like I have a couple friends that are in atmospheric sciences.
Interesting.
Oh yeah, so it's great. So we get a tornado. I call them, like, are we safe? Like little things like that come together. But it's a really cool opportunity.
That is awesome. And you stay in touch with everyone, I think, just because of the amount of time you spend with them and the bonds you make. And that's really cool. And to some extent too, you guys are all able to support and help each other in different ways. I'm curious to hear who has been your most, we can give a shout out, who's been your most like influential figure, if you want to say like overall in life, but like also throughout your time at school.
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm going to give maybe a bad answer to that one.
Go for it. No, it's no bad answers.
So I'd say my time in school, the most influential figure would probably be either my closest friends, but throughout my life, it's been my parents.
Yeah.
It's all in different ways, right? My mom is influential in a different way than my dad is influential for me. But that's something that I don't think was lost when I went to school. That's not something that I think changed necessarily, even though I think it grew. Even more so, actually, because it was a slight difference, a little bit of a distance away, which just, I think, led me to a greater appreciation. But they're the people I call when I've had a rough day.
Yeah.
They're the people I call when I've had a great day. They're the first people I text about these things. And so they weren't necessarily influential in the way of, you know, whether it's like learning a super specific skill, but they were influential in the way that I learned to be who I am today.
Okay.
And empowered me to take those steps to be confident in myself, to grow up with grit and tenacity, and all of these things that I think are just little components of how I've learned. And everything else, there's been, I mean, like hundreds of influential people throughout my time, from directors of accelerator programs to, you know, actually one of them, Standout Search, the company that I joined a while back, the founder was the first person that showed me that you could do something. You could start something from the ground up, and you don't need special skills. You don't need to be different necessarily. You don't need to learn anything before you do it. And I'm getting dinner with her tomorrow.
Nice.
She's living in New York now, but she's back in Chicago. So there are so many people like that have just been in pockets of my life, whether it be for a couple weeks or a couple months, but each one of them has left an imprint on me, left a mark in a way that I will always hold near and dear to me.
That's awesome. It's really cool. She lives in New York now?
She does, yes.
So we can't interview her, but maybe one
day. Maybe one day. She's still running Standout Search, actually, doing some great stuff out there. There's some very cool stories that get to pop up around the area, the more that you learn.
So what's Cara like outside of top tier lessons and swimming?
That's actually something that I've been learning for myself this year, really for the first time. I feel like when I'm in school, it's very much of, we have school, we have classes, we have swimming, we have top tier, we have hanging out with friends on the weekend. And there's not as much of time to be able to be doing a ton of different things. And now that I've moved up to the city, I've learned just, what do I like to do? What do I like to do on the weekends? What are some things that help me unwind? And recently it's been exploring new and different ways to, explore Chicago, see the city. I love to travel. Different things like that, but figuring out what sports do I like? What do I like to do to stay active? And it's been a little bit of running and biking. So I feel like with those two and swimming, I've got to get into triathlons.
Yeah, you should.
But I took a couple classes in like kickboxing and boxing, and I loved it. So I think one of my next steps for Cara outside of work is going to be actually joining a boxing gym and starting to train a little bit more on that end. So it should be really fun. Yeah,
that'd be really cool. There's actually a lot of boxing gyms around here too.
I've been researching. There's one in Pilsen that I think I'm gonna drive out to do.
I got you.
They have some cool training programs up there.
Nice. It's always cool to try new hobbies. I was talking with Manu as well, and he kind of emphasized trying different things and really going all in on, boxing for like 6 months, and then kind of, all right, that's kind of, the chapter's kind of done. Let's go on to the next. I personally have a big interest in partnerships, and when two organizations or entities partner with each other to kind of drive one mission home.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you like, do you partner with any other organizations, whether it be nonprofits or whether it be
Tons.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let's talk about
We can
that a
dive
little
into
bit.
this one. We have
I mean,
so many partners.
I always found it interesting. I don't know if everyone does, but I would love to learn how your process goes in terms of like the way you partner with an organization. Does it start with an email? Do you like, go in there in person? Like, how does that work out?
To partner with people, we will reach out in any way imaginable. We
Yeah.
have gone in person, we have called, we have done LinkedIn DMs, we have emailed, we have found them at events and gone up to them. So really our outreach process to find partners in the community, it spans just any way you can think of that you might be able to reach a human.
Mm-hmm. How do you select your partnerships? Like, how do you, kind of think that's a good partner? I want to talk to that person.
A lot of our partnerships, since we do work with kids in the community, and
Right.
most kids' decisions are driven by their parents.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of our partners are those who already reach out to parents of kids in sports.
Got it.
So we work with, park districts and government agencies and cities across really 10 cities cross country right now. That's where awesome. We've formed partnerships for everything from venue space and utilization, where we're able to actually bring in a new revenue stream to a park district in a community that they didn't have before, while increasing their youth programming. We've worked with cities for similar reasons. We'll look out for different youth sports organizations to be able to just add a little something different. We have a big network of college student athlete coaches. We have a platform that allows for on-demand training and scheduling and just different things like that.
Gotcha.
And we're really big we're lucky enough that at Top Tier, our revenue is tied directly to impact. So any partner that can help us drive impact for the company, in turn, is eventually going to help drive revenue. And at the same time, any way that we can help drive impact for another partner organization is also going to help them and us grow across the line. So those are the big things that we look for.
That's really cool. Long-term valuable partnerships.
Always. We're not in this for the short term.
Right. I can't help but ask, like, what have been your top challenges, especially recently, just with the growth that you've been experiencing?
One of our big challenges has just been figuring out what makes individual cities tick. What does the community look like in every city? Because it's going to look a little bit different in Chicago as it is in Orlando or Atlanta or San Antonio. And everything there, we're a company that's built on a network of hyper niche localized marketplaces.
Right.
And using that hyper niche approach works really well in certain places. And we do have plug and play models that work highly effectively. But when you're going down and breaking it down on almost a microorganism scale, and you're looking into, let's say, the soccer community in Houston, what does that look like? Who exists there? Who are the decision makers? What are the major clubs? Where are the facilities? And all of those little questions that need to be answered on a per market basis before you can get to that point of true market penetration.
Got it.
That's been challenging, just juggling the organization of the operational costs on that end. But we have a network of 17 campus directors that work with Top Tier that are all part of the company, and they're all current college athletes at these schools nationwide. And so they're really the ones that are on the ground for us. They're leading the charge. They're the ones that we get to rely on to say, hey, there's a basketball tournament in Indianapolis this weekend. Here's some flyers. Let's get out there and really hit the streets, hit the pavement on the ground and go ahead and move the needle forwards. And so really, I can't take credit for a lot of our launch because it's being done by these people who are pouring their hearts and souls into this, because it's, again, everything we do is near and dear to our hearts. It's Absolutely. For our teammates. It's for the kids in the community.
That's awesome. It's a team effort. It's never really about one person, but really everyone coming together and doing what you got to do.
Absolutely.
Wonderful, Cara. I wanted to thank you again for taking the time to be here with me, with the Chicago business community. I really do hope more people hear and learn about Top Tier Lessons and what you guys do. If you'd like to, if you have any tips for student entrepreneurs, especially in sports or tech, or any closing thoughts, any promotions you'd like to make, feel free.
Of course. I'd say the biggest tip that I have for student entrepreneurs is actually, this comes from one of my professors, Professor John Thody, at the University of Illinois, who was one of my earliest entrepreneurship classes that I ever took. And he sat down and he asked the whole class a question. He said, raise your hand if you have kids. No hands raised. You know, he's talking to a bunch of 18 to 20-year-olds.
Right.
Raise your hand if you have a mortgage, if you have to make car payments, and just different things like that, where he dove into how does this look, what's going on with your life. And really, no hands were raised for most of the questions. There was the occasional one up or down.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, so what's stopping you? What's stopping you from going out there and building something? What's stopping you from failing? Because really, failure isn't failure. Failure is crippled by the fear of failure, and that's what stops you from taking action. And you can never fail if you don't take action, but failure isn't failure. It's something that you can learn from, build from, grow, and continue to move forward. So I'm a strong believer that every failure is actually a success, just painted a slightly different color.
Yeah.
As long as you're continuing to carry that forward momentum. So my big advice to any student entrepreneur is, what's stopping you? Why aren't you taking the risk today? And what is that going to do if you never take that chance and you never take that step forward? So just go ahead, and whatever that first step may be, whether it's telling your roommate that you're going to get it started, go ahead and take it.
I love that. I'm not a student entrepreneur anymore, but
hey, that goes for grown-up entrepreneurs too, right? That's one thing that you can always take to heart, right, is what's stopping you, even if it's 2 hours on a Saturday that you normally would have spent watching a movie on Netflix. Start something, do something, tell someone that you're going to do it.
Yeah.
And that in itself is all the first steps that you need to hold yourself accountable to continue to do it.
No, I agree. I mean, as someone, again, I was talking with Manu about this, like, I was a entrepreneur in college, and started work after I graduated and realized, like, hey, there's something missing. I have to build something, like you just mentioned. And you know, when Sal and I started building Chicago Business Community, it started with one interview and then 2, 3. But that's, again, it's nothing that's, you know, too crazy. It's just a small commitment, and that's how it starts, and then that's how it grows. So I'm right there with you. I think it's a beautiful message. And yeah, thank you so much, Cara. Really appreciate you taking the time. I hope that, you know, let's stay in touch, and I hope that we can help a little bit grow TTL and in our own, have our own impact. So thank you so much.
Yes, and I appreciate it. It was great to speak with you.
Great to speak with you too.